After the divorce, my husband threw me out without a dime. I went to use the old, dusty card my father had left me, but the banker turned pale and shouted, "Ma'am, quickly. Look at this screen." I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. My husband put me out on the street and kept all my assets just to hand them over to his mistress. All I have left is a worn-out debit card my father left me. I thought the balance was zero, but it ended up making the bank manager tremble with fear. Come on, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can unravel this mystery together. The thick, humid heat of an Atlanta summer hit my skin the moment I stepped out of the Uber. I had spent 2 long, exhausting weeks in a tiny, dusty town in Alabama, way down in the sticks, taking care of my mother who had been critically ill. Now that she was finally stable, I was returning home, longing for the comfort of my luxury penthouse and, of course, my husband, Derek. I dragged my small suitcase through the lobby of the Sovereign, one of the most prestigious apartment buildings in Buckhead, right in the heart of Atlanta's wealth. A smile spread across my face when the elevator chimed on the 30th floor. I was exhausted, my bones ached from sleeping on a hospital cot, but I was happy to be home. The hallway was cool and quiet, smelling faintly of lemon polish and expensive carpet. I arrived in front of door 30A, my penthouse. I dug around in my purse, pushing past old receipts and gum wrappers, and finally pulled out the key fob for the apartment. I tapped the card against the digital reader on the door. Beep, beep. A red light flashed. Access denied. I frowned, wiping a bead of sweat from my forehead. I tried again. Beep, beep. Red light. That's strange, I murmured to myself, tapping it a 3rd time with a bit more force. Maybe the card got demagnetized near my phone. I rang the doorbell twice. There was a moment of silence. Then, footsteps could be heard inside, followed by the soft click of the heavy lock turning from the inside. The heavy mahogany door swung open. There stood Derek, my husband of 10 years. But he wasn't the Derek I knew. The man's eyes were cold, detached, like I was a stranger soliciting donations. He was wearing a silk robe, black, expensive, and on his neck, there was a fresh mark of bright red lipstick. "Ah, you're back already," Derek said. And it wasn't a welcoming greeting. It sounded more like a complaint. My heart seemed to skip a beat, then hammered against my ribs. "Derek? Why isn't my key working?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "Because I changed the locks," Derek replied, his large frame blocking the entrance completely. From inside the apartment, the crystal-clear laughter of a woman rang out. "Babe, who is it? If it's the housekeeper, tell her to come back later." A young and very beautiful woman, decades younger than me, appeared over Derek's shoulder. I recognized her instantly. It was Tiffany, a local Instagram model who was always tagged at the same events Derek attended. She made my stomach turn. Tiffany was wearing my silk robe. The very same peach-colored silk robe I had gifted myself for our wedding anniversary last year because Derek had forgotten to buy me anything. Tiffany's eyes swept over me from top to bottom, judging my simple travel clothes, my hair frizzy from the humidity, my tired face without makeup, and my worn-out suitcase. "Oh," Tiffany said with a mocking smirk, sipping from a flute of champagne. "It's not the housekeeper. Turns out it's the ex-wife." "Ex-wife? Derek, what is this?" I whispered, feeling a stinging burn in my eyes. "Who is she? Why is she in our house? Why is she wearing my clothes?" Derek sighed, rolling his eyes as if I were a trivial nuisance he had to deal with before dinner. "Listen, Marilyn, this is over. Better we talk downstairs. Don't make a scene here." "Make a scene?" I choked out. "This is my home." "Not anymore," he said flatly. He didn't even give me a chance to step inside to get a glass of water. He stepped out into the hallway, closing the door behind him, leaving Tiffany smiling smugly on the inside. Click. The sound of that latch clicking shut was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It sounded like the end of my life. I stood there, staring at the wood grain of the door, unable to process the cruelty. My husband, the man I had built everything with, had literally shut the door in my face. Derek pressed the elevator button, refusing to look at me. The silence in the hallway was suffocating. I stared at his profile, the sharp jawline, the expensive grooming, and my mind couldn't reconcile this cold monster with the man I had married. My mind flashed back to 10 years ago. We weren't in the Sovereign then. We were in a cramped, one-bedroom apartment in a bad part of town where the sirens wailed all night long. Derek wasn't a real estate mogul then, he was just a contractor with big dreams and empty pockets. I remembered the day he came home, sitting on our second-hand sofa, his head in his hands. "I can't do it, Marilyn," he had sobbed. "I can't make payroll. The bank turned me down for the loan. My construction company is dead before it even started. I was an accountant back then. I was good with numbers, careful with money." I sat beside him, rubbing his back, feeling his despair. I loved him so much it hurt. I believed in him. I believed in us. "We'll find a way," I had whispered. And we did. Or rather, I did. I went into the bedroom and opened my small jewelry box. Inside was a sapphire ring, the only valuable thing my mother had ever given me before she got sick. It was a family heirloom, meant to be passed down. I took it out. I didn't hesitate. I remembered walking into the pawn shop, the smell of stale smoke and desperation in the air. The broker offered me a fraction of what it was worth, but I took the cash. I took that cash, along with every penny of my savings, my 401k from my accounting job, and I gave it to Derek. "Here," I told him, pressing the envelope into his rough hands. "Pay your guys. Buy the materials. Build your dream." He had looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I swear to you, Marilyn," he had said, clutching my hands. "I will pay you back tenfold. You are my partner. We are building this empire together. I'll make you a queen." I believed him. God, I was so naive. I quit my job to handle his books. I worked 18-hour days, managing invoices, fighting with suppliers, soothing angry clients, while he played the charismatic face of the company. When money was tight, which was often in those first few years, I was the one who skipped lunch. I was the one who dyed my own hair in the bathroom sink to save $50. I was the one who drove a beat-up Honda Civic with no air conditioning so he could lease a shiny truck to impress clients. I sacrificed my career, my financial independence, and my youth to build sterling developments. I looked at him now, standing in the elevator, smelling of expensive cologne and betrayal. He checked his gold watch, a watch purchased with the profits I had helped secure. "Derek," I said, my voice barely a whisper in the quiet elevator. "I sold my mother's ring for you. I gave you everything." He finally turned to look at me, but there was no softness in his eyes. Only annoyance. "Stop living in the past, Marilyn," he scoffed. "That was business. You made an investment. And honestly, you got a good return. You've lived in a penthouse for 5 years. You haven't worked a real job in a decade. Don't act like a martyr." "I haven't worked?" I asked, incredulous. "I managed your accounts until last year. I organized every gala, every charity event that got your name in the paper. I made you respectable. You were a glorified secretary," he spat. "And lately? You're an embarrassment." The elevator doors opened into the lobby, cutting off my protest. The rush of cool air and the chatter of residents hit us. Derek walked out briskly, expecting me to follow like an obedient dog. I stumbled after him, my heart shattering with every step. I realized then that while I was building a life, he was just building a resume. While I was sacrificing for us, he was only ever thinking about himself. I remembered the nights I sat alone waiting for him, reheating dinner while he was out networking. I remembered how he stopped holding my hand in public. I remembered how he started criticizing my clothes, telling me I looked frumpy compared to the wives of his business partners. I had ignored all the red flags. I had painted them white with my loyalty. And now, that loyalty was being repaid with an eviction notice. Derek marched toward a secluded corner of the lobby, near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Peachtree Road. I followed, feeling the eyes of the concierge on me. He knew me. He greeted me every morning. Now, he looked away, sensing the tension, unwilling to witness my shame. As we walked, my mind replayed the last 3 years, the slow, agonizing drift. It hadn't happened overnight. It was a gradual erosion of affection, replaced by a cold, shiny veneer of materialism. As Sterling Developments became a major player in Atlanta real estate, Derek changed. He started obsessing over image. He hired stylists, joined exclusive country clubs, and bought art he didn't understand just because it was expensive. He wanted to erase his humble beginnings. And the biggest reminder of those humble beginnings? Me. I didn't care about the gala dinners or the fake smiles. I preferred gardening. I liked getting my hands in the dirt, growing tomatoes and hydrangeas on the balcony. Derek hated it. "You look like a farm girl," he had sneered one evening, finding me with dirt under my fingernails. "We have staff for that, Marilyn. You're the wife of a CEO. Act like it." I tried. I really tried. I bought the designer dresses that felt itchy and tight. I went to the spas. I sat through boring dinners listening to men brag about their golf handicaps. But it was never enough. The breaking point, or the moment I should have known it was over, was our anniversary last year. Our 9th anniversary. I had planned a romantic dinner at home. I cooked his favorite meal, roast beef, just like I used to make when we were poor. I had dressed up, waiting for him. He came home 3 hours late, smelling of scotch. He tossed a box onto the table. "Happy anniversary," he mumbled, loosening his tie. I opened it, expecting maybe a bracelet, or even just a thoughtful card. It was a robot vacuum cleaner. I stared at it, fighting back tears. "A vacuum?" "Derek, we have a housekeeper." "It's the top of the line," he said defensively. "It has AI mapping. It's expensive." "But, it's a cleaning appliance," I said, my voice cracking. "For our anniversary?" "You're always complaining about dust," he said, turning on the TV. "I thought you'd be grateful. You're so hard to please lately." Meanwhile, a week later, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket for a $15,000 Rolex. He claimed he bought it as a business investment to impress a client. Now I realized he bought it for himself, a reward for his own greatness, while I was worth nothing more than an appliance to keep his floor clean. Standing in the lobby now, looking at him, I realized he hadn't loved me in years. He tolerated me. I was a prop. And now that he had found a shinier, younger prop, Tiffany, I was being discarded. "Derek," I said, standing near the glass window, watching the Atlanta traffic crawl by. How long has this been going on with her?" He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He adjusted his silk cuffs. "A year. Maybe a bit more." "A year?" I felt like I was going to throw up. "While I was nursing your mother after her stroke? While I was running the company charity drive? You were, with her?" "She understands me, Marilyn," he said, his voice dropping to a cruel whisper. "She's vital. She's full of life. You've let yourself go. You're depressing to be around." Always worrying about your mom in Alabama, always talking about saving money. I've outgrown you. Outgrown me? I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. I'm not a pair of shoes, Derek. I'm your wife. Not anymore, he repeated. Suddenly, a security guard approached us, pushing a small, tattered duffel bag on a cart. It was my old gym bag. The one I used to use years ago. Derek grabbed the bag and threw it at my feet. It hit the marble floor with a dull thud. The zipper burst open slightly, spilling out some of my old t-shirts and a pair of worn sneakers. Those are your things, Derek said loudly. The rest, the designer clothes, the jewelry I bought you, that stays. That was purchased with company money. It belongs to the estate. You can't do this, I stammered, looking at my pathetic pile of belongings. I can. And I have, he said. He tossed a thick brown envelope onto the duffel bag. Divorce papers. I've already signed them. My lawyers drew them up. Infidelity clauses voided because Georgia is a no-fault state, and honestly, good luck proving anything against my legal team. He leaned in, his face inches from mine. You came into this marriage with nothing, Marilyn. You leave with nothing. The tears finally escaped my eyes. This wasn't just heartbreak, it was an annihilation of my entire existence. You leave with nothing. The words echoed in the high ceilings of the lobby. Residents were starting to stop and stare. A woman I recognized from the elevator, Mrs. Higgins, paused with her poodle, watching with wide eyes. The concierge pretended to be on the phone, but I could see him watching the reflection in the glass. Derek, please, I pleaded, my dignity crumbling. I have nowhere to go. My mom, she's still recovering. I can't go back there yet. Just let me stay in the guest room for a few days. Just until I sort this out. Derek laughed. It was a loud, barking laugh that drew even more attention. The guest room? With Tiffany upstairs? Are you crazy? No. But I have no money on me, I cried. You know I transferred everything to the joint account before I left for Alabama. That account is frozen pending the divorce settlement, he lied smoothly. I knew he was lying. He had probably drained it. Sign the papers, Marilyn. If you behave yourself and don't make a scene, maybe, I'll have my assistant Venmo you enough for a Greyhound bus ticket back to that dirt road you came from. Some people in the lobby started to whisper. I felt naked. I felt dirty. Get out, Derek hissed. But this is my home too. I shouted, desperation making me loud. Security! Derek yelled, waving his hand. 2 security guards approached. One of them was Ben, a sweet older man I often chatted with about his grandkids. He looked miserable. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Mrs. Sterling, Ben mumbled, looking at his shoes. Mr. Sterling is the leaseholder, he's asking you to leave. Ben, please, I said, grabbing his arm. You know me. Don't touch the staff, Derek snapped. Escort her out. Now. Or I'll have you fired, Ben. Ben flinched. He gently took my elbow. Please, ma'am. Don't make it harder. I let go. I looked at Derek one last time. He wasn't even looking at me anymore. He was texting on his phone, probably telling Tiffany the problem was handled. I bent down and zipped up the tattered duffel bag. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the zipper. I grabbed the brown envelope containing the divorce papers, the document that marked the end of my life. I walked toward the heavy glass revolving doors. Every click of my shoes on the marble sounded like a countdown to my destruction. Above me, on the mezzanine railing, I saw a flash of peach silk. Tiffany was watching from above, a champagne glass in her hand, smiling like a cat that just ate the canary. The heavy glass door hissed shut behind me, pushing me out into the humid Atlanta evening. The air was thick and heavy, smelling of exhaust fumes and impending rain. I stood on the sidewalk. The valet looked at me, confused, waiting for me to hand him a ticket for a car I no longer owned. "No car today, ma'am?" he asked politely. "No," I whispered. "No car." I turned and walked away from the Sovereign. I didn't know where I was going. I just walked. I walked until my legs burned. I walked until the fancy shops of Buckhead gave way to the busy, noisy streets of Midtown. Derek had taken everything. My home. My money. My pride. He had stripped me down to nothing but the clothes on my back and a bag of rags. He thought he had won. He thought I was finished. And at that moment, as the first drops of rain began to fall, mixing with the tears on my face, I believed him. I was a 52-year-old woman with no job, no husband, and no future. I was invisible. Night fell quickly in Atlanta. The streetlights flickered on, casting long, distorted shadows on the pavement. For me, the whole world seemed to have gone dark. I walked aimlessly. The sound of honking horns from the heavy traffic on Peachtree Street sounded like roaring beasts in my ears. I had nowhere to go. My mother in Alabama was still in recovery. She was frail, living on a fixed income. I couldn't add the weight of this news to her burden. If I told her Derek had thrown me out, the stress might kill her. My feet, aching in my travel shoes, carried me to Centennial Olympic Park. I found an empty bench under a large oak tree, trying to shield myself from the drizzle. I sat down, hugging my duffel bag tight against my chest like a shield. My stomach growled loud and angry. I hadn't eaten since a quick breakfast at the hospital in Alabama at 6 a.m. It was now past 9 p.m. Ironically, all around me, the city was coming alive with the smell of food. The aroma of barbecue ribs, fried chicken, and waffle cones floated in the air from the nearby restaurants, making my stomach ache even more. People laughed as they walked by. Young couples holding hands, tourists taking photos. I felt like a ghost. Invisible. Non-existent. I opened the cheap wallet Derek had thrown into the bag. My hands trembled as I counted the cash. A $5 bill. 4 ones. And some loose change. Less than $10. $10. That was my net worth. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of building a company, 10 years of sacrifice, and I was worth $10. It wasn't even enough for a meal at a decent diner, let alone a night in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. I pulled out my phone. Battery was at 12%. I rushed to open the mobile banking app for our joint account, the one I had used to pay all our bills, the one my mother's inheritance had gone into years ago. Login failed. Reason: account closed/access revoked. I tried my personal credit card. Declined. Derek had been thorough. He hadn't just kicked me out, he had erased me financially. He had planned this. While I was in Alabama wiping my mother's forehead, he was sitting in his office with his lawyers, systematically cutting every lifeline I had. A cold, heavy despair wrapped around me, tighter than the humid air. It was over. I was truly at rock bottom. I would be homeless tonight. Me, Marilyn Vance, who yesterday was the wife of a CEO, would be sleeping on a park bench. Tears fell silently. I looked down at the contents of my wallet again, shuffling through the useless loyalty cards for grocery stores I could no longer afford. Behind the card slot, hidden in a little plastic sleeve, was a faded photo. I pulled it out. It was a picture of my father, Earl Vance. He was standing in front of his old pickup truck, wearing his favorite flannel shirt and a baseball cap that said Vance Farms. He had died 10 years ago, just a few months before I married Derek. He was a simple man, a man of few words, but his eyes in the photo were kind and sharp. "I'm sorry, Daddy," I whispered to the photo, my thumb tracing his face. You warned me. You told me he was slick. You told me he had hungry eyes. I didn't listen. I started to slide the photo back into the wallet when I felt something stiff behind it. I frowned. I pulled the photo out completely. Stuck to the back of the picture, almost glued there by time and humidity, was a plastic card. I peeled it off. It was a faded blue debit card. The laminate was peeling at the edges. The logo was barely legible, Southern Legacy Bank. It was an old, regional bank that had barely survived the financial crisis years ago. I stared at it, stunned. I remembered now. My father gave me this card when I was 42, right before he passed away. Keep this, Marilyn, he had said, his voice raspy from the illness. This is an account I set up. Don't mix it with your husband's money. Don't tell him about it. I had laughed it off back then. Daddy, Derek and I share everything. We're partners. Just take it, he had insisted, pressing it into my hand. Hide it. Forget about it. Until you can't. I had tucked it behind his photo and honestly, I had forgotten about it. I was so busy building Derek's empire, grieving my father, and taking care of my mom that the card had become just a piece of plastic backing for the picture. I held it up to the dim street lamp. The expiration date. 12/26. It was still valid? How? Cards usually expire every few years. Unless it was some kind of special account? I looked at the chip. It was scratched but intact. My heart gave a little flutter. Was there any money in it? Dad was a farmer. He did okay, but he wasn't rich. Maybe there was a few $100? 1,000? If there was even $50, I could buy a bus ticket to Alabama. I could go home to Mom. I could hide there and lick my wounds. A small hope, as thin as a thread, began to light up in my tight chest. I didn't sleep that night. I was too scared to close my eyes. I pulled my knees up to my chest on the park bench, clutching my bag, watching the shadows for danger. Every rustle of leaves made me jump. As the hours dragged on, my mind drifted back to that day on the porch with my father, Earl Vance. It was late autumn in Alabama. The pecan trees were bare, their branches scratching against the gray sky. Dad was sitting in his rocking chair, a blanket over his legs. He knew he was dying. Marilyn, he had said, coughing softly. Sit with me. I sat on the steps, resting my head on his knee. I'm here, Daddy. That man you're marrying. Derek, he started. Daddy, please, I sighed. He loves me. He loves what you can do for him, Earl said sharply. He's got a hunger in him, Marilyn. Not the good kind. The kind that eats everything around it to feed itself. He's new money in his soul, flashy, loud, and unstable. You don't know him, I defended Derek. I know men, Earl said. And I know land. Land is honest. Land stays. Men like Derek, they shift like sand. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out that blue card. This is your anchor, he said, handing it to me. An anchor? If your ship is sailing smooth, you don't need an anchor, he explained, his blue eyes piercing mine. You keep it pulled up. You forget it's there. But if the storm comes, if the ship starts to sink, you drop the anchor. It'll hold you. How much is in it? I asked, looking at the playing card. He smiled, a mysterious, sad smile. Enough to keep you from drifting away. But listen to me, baby girl. This account, it has rules. I set it up special. You can't touch it while you're comfortable. You can't use it to buy that man a fancy truck. It's for you. Only for you. When you have nothing else. I'll never need it, I promised him. Derek and I are going to be rich. I hope so, Earl whispered. But hope ain't a strategy. Back in the present, sitting on the cold park bench, tears streamed down my face again. Dad knew. He saw Derek's betrayal coming 10 years before it happened. He saw the hollowness in Derek's soul that I was too blind to see. The ship is sinking, Daddy, I whispered to the night air. The ship is gone. I'm drowning. I looked at the card again. Southern Legacy Bank. I remembered where their main branch was. It was an old stone building downtown, not far from here. It was an outlier in a city of glass skyscrapers, a stubborn relic of the Old South, just like my father. The $10 in my wallet wouldn't save me. But maybe, just maybe, Earl Vance's anchor would. I waited for dawn. When the sun finally began to rise, painting the Atlanta sky in hues of purple and orange, I stood up. My body was stiff. My clothes were wrinkled and damp. I felt dirty and ashamed. But the faded blue card felt warm in my hand. I walked to a public restroom in the park. I washed my face with cold water and paper towels. I tried to smooth down my hair. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back was tired, with dark circles under her eyes, but there was a flicker of something new in her gaze. Desperation? Yes. But also anger. I wasn't going to just fade away. I was Earl Vance's daughter. And I was going to the bank. At 9 a.m. sharp, I was standing in front of the Southern Legacy Bank. The building looked exactly as I remembered from childhood visits with my dad. Heavy limestone pillars, brass railings, and a revolving door that felt like it weighed a ton. It sat in the shadow of the glistening Truist Plaza Tower, looking small and forgotten. I pushed through the doors. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of old paper and dust, a stark contrast to the sterile, citrus-scented air of Derek's modern bank. The floors were checkered marble, cracked in places. There were only 2 tellers working. The place was quiet. I walked up to the window. The name tag read Toby. He was young, maybe 25, with messy hair and a tie that was slightly crooked. Good morning, ma'am, Toby said cheerfully, though his eyes lingered for a second on my wrinkled clothes and the tattered duffel bag slung over my shoulder. How can I help you? Good morning, I said, my voice hoarse. I cleared my throat. I want to check the balance on this card. And maybe make a withdrawal. I've forgotten the PIN. I slid the blue card under the glass partition. Toby picked it up. He turned it over, frowning. Wow. I haven't seen one of these in a long time. This is the old logo. The bank hasn't used this design since before I started working here. Can it still be used? I asked anxiously, my heart hammering against my ribs. Let me check, ma'am. Toby took my ID, my driver's license still said Marilyn Sterling. He started typing on his computer. Clack. 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 The system seemed slow. Toby tapped his fingers on the desk, waiting. Is there a problem? I asked, gripping the counter. Just, the system is lagging, he muttered. It's trying to pull up the archive data. Suddenly, his screen flickered. Toby frowned deeper. Ha. What? Is it empty? I felt the bile rise in my throat. If it was empty, I was dead. I was literally dead on the street. No, it's not that, Toby said, looking confused. It's not showing a balance. It's showing a code. Red text. I've never seen this before. He typed something else. Suddenly, a loud, shrill beep echoed from his computer. It wasn't a normal notification sound. It was an alarm. Beep. 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 I jumped back. I didn't do anything. I cried out, terrified. Was the card stolen? Was I going to be arrested? Toby's face went pale. He stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The red light from the monitor reflected in his glasses. "Ma'am," he whispered. He looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. "What is it?" I pleaded. "Just give me the card back. I'll leave." "No!" Toby practically shouted. He stood up so fast his chair rolled back and hit the wall. Don't go. Please." He turned and yelled toward the back office, his voice cracking. "Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson. Come out here. Now." The few other customers in the bank turned to look. I wanted to sink into the floor. This was it. The final humiliation. Derek had probably flagged my name everywhere. I was going to be dragged out in handcuffs for trying to use a dead man's card. The door to the manager's office flew open. A middle-aged man with thinning hair and a stern expression marched out. "Toby, what is the meaning of this yelling?" "We have clients," Mr. Henderson scolded. "Sir, you need to look at this," Toby said, pointing a trembling finger at the screen. Code 99. The Vance account. Mr. Henderson froze mid-step. His annoyance evaporated instantly, replaced by a look of pure shock. "What did you say?" "The Vance account." It woke up," Toby whispered. Mr. Henderson rushed to the computer. He pushed Toby aside and leaned in, squinting at the glowing red text. He read for a few seconds. Then, slowly, he turned to look at me. His face was as white as a sheet. He looked at my dirty clothes, my bag, and then back at my face. He swallowed hard. "Ma'am?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Are you Mrs. Marilyn Vance?" "It's Marilyn Sterling now," I whispered. "But yes. Earl Vance was my father." Mr. Henderson let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. "Toby," he barked, suddenly authoritative. "Close your window. Put up the closed sign. Right now." "But sir, the line." "I don't care about the line," Mr. Henderson shouted. He rushed around the counter, coming out into the lobby. He approached me not with suspicion, but with a strange, terrified reverence. "Mrs. Vance," he said, bowing his head slightly. "Please. Come with me to my office immediately. We cannot discuss this in the lobby." He gestured toward the heavy oak door. "Quickly, ma'am. Before the system locks down." I was in shock. I grabbed my dirty duffel bag and followed him, leaving the confused customers and a terrified Toby behind. Mr. Henderson's office was a time capsule of old-world wealth. Heavy leather chairs, dark wood paneling, and a smell of cigars and old paper. He ushered me in and locked the door behind us. He even pulled the blinds shut. "Please, sit down," he said, gesturing to a plush chair. I sat on the edge of the seat, clutching my bag. "Am I in trouble? Did my father owe money?" Mr. Henderson laughed. It was a nervous, hysterical little sound. "Owe money? Good heavens, no." He went behind his massive desk and typed furiously on his private terminal. "Mrs. I'll call you Mrs. Vance, if you don't mind. The name Sterling doesn't appear on this file." "That's fine," I said. "I don't want to be a Sterling anymore anyway." "Good," he muttered. He hit enter with a flourish. He turned the monitor around so I could see it. "Mrs. Vance, what you held in your hand was not a standard debit card. It was a key. A dormant key to a master trust." "A trust?" I frowned. "My dad was a farmer, Mr. Henderson. a tobacco and pecan farmer. Your father was a genius, ma'am, Henderson said solemnly. Yes, he farmed. But in the 80s and 90s, when everyone was selling land to developers for pennies, your father was buying. He bought swampland, he bought scrubland, he bought commercial lots that nobody wanted. And he put it all into a holding company. What company? Vance Legacy Holdings LLC, Henderson said. He kept it entirely secret. He lived simply so no one would know. He told me once, wealth makes you a target, Henderson. Especially for the people closest to you. I felt a chill run down my spine. Dad knew. So, what does this mean? I asked, looking at the screen. It was just a wall of text and legal jargon. Is there money in there? Look at the bottom line, Henderson pointed. I leaned in. My eyes scanned past the legal clauses until they hit the total asset valuation line. I blinked. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. It wasn't hundreds. It wasn't thousands. It was a number with so many commas I had to count them. This says 2,000 acres? I whispered. And cash reserves of. It's a significant amount, Henderson said, his voice hushed. The land alone, specifically the parcels in South Georgia and the commercial plots on the outskirts of Atlanta, is valued in the tens of millions. The cash accumulation from leases over the last 10 years, well, you can see the figure. My jaw dropped. My father wasn't just comfortable. He was a tycoon in disguise. But why couldn't I access it before? I asked. Why did the card give a red alert? The desperate clause, Henderson said. Your father wrote the trust with a very specific trigger condition. The assets were to remain frozen and invisible until one of two things happened: you turned 60, or he clicked a tab. Or the heir attempts to access the account when their own personal net worth has hit absolute zero. I froze. The system checked your credit score and your linked bank accounts the moment Toby swiped that card, Henderson explained. It saw the bankruptcy flags Derek put on you. It saw the zero balance. It saw the distress. So, because I'm broke. Because you are broke, Henderson smiled, a genuine smile this time, you are now one of the wealthiest women in Georgia. Your father wanted to ensure that if you ever hit rock bottom, if that husband of yours ever drained you dry, the safety net would catch you. And not just catch you. It would bounce you back to the stratosphere. I sat back in the leather chair, feeling the room spin. My father, the man in the flannel shirt who drove a rusted truck, had played the longest game in history. He had looked at Derek 10 years ago, saw a predator, and instead of fighting him then, he built a fortress for me to retreat to. He knew, I sobbed, covering my face with my hands. He knew this would happen. He loved you very much, Henderson said softly. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a yellowed envelope. He left this for you. To be opened only when the account activated. He slid the envelope across the desk. It had my name on it in Dad's shaky handwriting. To my baby girl. I took it. My hands were shaking. Mrs. Vance, Henderson said, his tone shifting to business. Technically, you are now the sole CEO and owner of Vance Legacy Holdings. You have liquid cash available immediately. But I must ask, what are your instructions? Do you want to liquidate? Sell the land? I looked at the envelope. I thought about Derek's face when he threw my bag in the lobby. I thought about Tiffany laughing in my robe. I thought about the you leave with nothing threat. I wiped my tears. I looked at Mr. Henderson. The fear was gone. The sadness was being replaced by a cold, burning fire in my gut. No, I said firmly. We don't sell. Not yet. Then what? I opened the envelope. I needed to know what my father wanted me to do. But deep down, I already knew. "Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice steady for the first time in days. "I need 3 things immediately. First, I need cash. A lot of it. Second, I need a suite at the St. Regis Hotel, under a fake name. And third," I leaned forward, my eyes locking with his, "I need the best corporate shark in the city. I need a consultant who knows how to tear a business apart and eat it for lunch. Because I'm not just going to survive, Mr. Henderson. I'm going to war." Mr. Henderson grinned. "I know just the man. They call him the cleaner. Mr. Henderson handed me the letter. It felt heavy, not because of the paper, but because of the soul inside it. I held it against my chest for a moment, smelling the faint scent of tobacco and old leather that still clung to the envelope after 10 years. It was the smell of my childhood. It was the smell of safety. "I'll give you a moment," Mr. Henderson said respectfully, stepping out of the office and closing the door softly. I was alone with my father's ghost. I slit the envelope open with a silver letter opener from the desk. Inside was a single sheet of yellow legal pad paper, covered in Dad's distinct, scratchy handwriting. "To my baby girl, Marilyn. If you are reading this, it means 2 things have happened. First, I am gone, and I can no longer protect you with my shotgun. Second, life hasn't gone according to your sweet, optimistic plans. I know you love that boy, Derek. I know you see a builder, a dreamer. But I see a wolf, Marilyn. I see a man who measures his worth by the size of his shadow, not the content of his character. I saw how he looked at our land, not with respect, but with greed. I was afraid. I was afraid that your soft heart would be your undoing. You give too much, baby girl. You always have. You'd give the coat off your back to a stranger, and Derek is the type of man who would take it and complain it wasn't cashmere. So, I built this trust. Not to spoil you, you know I don't believe in unearned money, but to give you options when you feel cornered. I designed the desperate clause on purpose. I wanted to make sure that if he ever discarded you, if he ever left you with nothing, you would realize that you were never actually poor. You were just waiting. I failed you in one thing, I couldn't make you see his true colors while I was alive. I hope you never have to read this letter. But if you do, remember Papa's message. Don't cry. Don't get revenge with tears. Tears are for the weak, and Vances are not weak. Build your own kingdom, my child. Use this anchor to smash the glass house he built. Make them regret the day they underestimated Earl Vance's daughter. The anchor has been dropped. Now sail, baby girl. Love, Papa. The tears I had been holding back finally fell. But they weren't the hot, stinging tears of humiliation I had shed in the lobby of the Sovereign. These were cool, cleansing tears. They were tears of understanding. My father, a simple man who barely finished high school, had outsmarted the slickest developer in Atlanta from beyond the grave. He had seen the future. He had seen Derek for exactly what he was, a parasite. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I stood up and walked to the small mirror hanging in the corner of the office. I looked at myself. I saw the frizzy hair, the dark circles, the wrinkled travel clothes. I saw the frumpy housewife Derek had mocked. "No more," I whispered. I reached up and smoothed my hair. I straightened my spine. I thought about the 2,000 acres of land. I thought about the millions in cash reserves. I thought about the power resting in that dormant account. Mr. Henderson knocked and re-entered. He looked at me with concern. "Mrs. Vance? Are you all right?" I turned to him. The woman who had walked in begging for $50 was gone. "Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice surprising even myself with its steadiness. "I am better than all right. I am ready." "Excellent. What is our first move?" First, I said, pointing to the computer. I want you to transfer $50,000 into a liquid spending account. Cash. Today. Done. Second, I continued, pacing the small room. I need a place to stay. Not a motel. I want a suite at the St. Regis. But book it under a shell company name. I don't want Derek to see Marilyn Sterling popping up on any credit checks. Smart, Henderson nodded, typing. And the third thing? I leaned forward, resting my hands on his mahogany desk. You mentioned a consultant. The cleaner. I want him. I want the best corporate shark in Atlanta. Someone who hates the good old boys club. Someone who knows how to destroy a company from the inside out. Mr. Henderson smiled, a glint of mischief in his eyes. His name is Marcus King. He's expensive. He's cold. And he's absolutely brilliant. He usually works for Fortune 500 companies, but for the Vance estate, I think he'll make an exception. Call him, I ordered. Tell him I have a job that involves 2,000 acres of prime land and a very personal vendetta. I picked up my tattered duffel bag. It felt lighter now. I'm going to the hotel to shower, Mr. Henderson. When I come back tomorrow, I won't look like this. I'm going to burn these clothes. I look forward to it, ma'am. I walked out of Southern Legacy Bank into the bright Atlanta sun. I hailed a cab, not a Uber, but a premium black car service that was idling nearby. The driver looked skeptical at my appearance until I flashed a wad of cash Henderson had given me from the vault. To the St. Regis, I said. And step on it. The game had changed. Derek thought he had kicked a stray dog out onto the street. He had no idea he had just unlocked the cage of a lioness. The next morning, I didn't recognize myself. After a night in the St. Regis suite, sleeping on 800 thread count sheets, ordering room service steak and lobster, I had spent the morning at Phipps Plaza. I didn't go to the flashy stores Derek liked. I went to the understated, elegant boutiques. I bought a tailored navy blue power suit, a crisp white silk blouse, and a pair of Italian leather heels that clicked with authority. I went to a salon and told them to cut it all off. My long, unmanageable hair was transformed into a sharp, chic bob that framed my face. With a pair of oversized sunglasses and a structured leather handbag, I looked like a CEO. I looked like money. Real money. I took a car to the financial district in Midtown. Marcus King's office was on the 45th floor of a glass tower that looked down on the entire city. The receptionist looked at me, scanning my new clothes. She didn't sneer. She sat up straighter. Mrs. Vance? Mr. King is expecting you. I was ushered into a corner office that was all glass and steel. It was cold, minimalist, and intimidating. Marcus King stood by the window. He was a tall black man in his late 30s, impeccable in a charcoal suit. He didn't smile when I entered. He turned, his eyes scanning me like a laser scanner reading a barcode. Mrs. Vance, he said. His voice was deep, smooth, and utterly devoid of warmth. Henderson told me you have a dormant asset portfolio that just woke up. And a husband problem. Ex-husband problem, I corrected, sitting in the leather chair opposite him without being invited. Or soon to be. I don't do divorce law, Marcus said, sitting down. I restructure failing companies. I facilitate mergers. I don't handle domestic disputes. I'm not asking you to handle a domestic dispute, Mr. King, I said, placing my new handbag on his desk. I'm asking you to help me leverage a multi-million-dollar asset to acquire, and then dismantle, a competitor. Marcus raised an eyebrow. A competitor? Sterling Developments, I said. Marcus leaned back, steepling his fingers. Derek Sterling. Mid-sized developer. Flashy. Over-leveraged. Known for cutting corners. That's the husband? That's him. And you want to ruin him? No, I said calmly. Ruin is messy. I want to buy him. I want to own his debt. I want to control his fate. And then I want to crush him legally, ethically, and totally. Marcus stared at me for a long moment. You're an accountant, aren't you? Henderson sent over your file. I was a CPA before I became a housewife, I replied. I know how to read a balance sheet, Mr. King. I know Derek's company is a house of cards. He's cash poor and asset heavy. He moves money between shell companies to hide losses. I helped him set up the original structure 10 years ago. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. You know where the bodies are buried. I dug the graves, I said coldly. But I didn't know he would try to bury me in one of them. Marcus finally smiled. It was a small, sharp smile. Okay. You have my attention. What's the plan? Derek needs a big project to stay afloat, I explained. He's desperate for a crown jewel to attract new investors because his credit lines are tapped out. He's been eyeing land in South Georgia for a luxury resort. A Southern Hamptons concept. And let me guess, Marcus said, looking at the file on his desk. The land he wants is mine, I finished. He doesn't know it. He thinks it belongs to Vance Legacy Holdings, some faceless corporation. He never knew my father's business name. He thought my dad was just a dirt farmer. So you want to lure him in, Marcus said, nodding. You want to dangle the carrot. I want to dangle the carrot, let him bite, and then reveal that the hook is in my hand, I said. But I need you to be the face. He can't know it's me. Not yet. I can be the face, Marcus agreed. I'll be the consultant representing the mysterious board of directors of Vance Legacy. But Mrs. Vance, are you sure? This is going to cost you. My fees are high. And if we do this, there's no going back. You will be declaring war. I thought about the $10 in my wallet the night before. I thought about Tiffany in my robe. Mr. King, I said. I have 2,000 acres of pecans and a broken heart. I can afford your fees. The question is, can you afford to miss watching the show? Marcus laughed. It was a genuine, surprised sound. He extended his hand. When do we start? Yesterday, I said, shaking his hand firmly. Now, teach me how to win. The next 3 months were a blur of activity. While Derek and Tiffany were likely partying in my penthouse, thinking I was rotting in a trailer park in Alabama, I was in boot camp with Marcus. We set up a temporary headquarters in the library of the St. Regis Suite, and later, moved to a secure office in Midtown. I didn't just sit back and let Marcus do the work. I dove in. I spent 18 hours a day studying. I learned about land trusts, commercial zoning laws, and aggressive acquisition strategies. I dusted off my old accounting skills and sharpened them into weapons. I analyzed the financial reports of sterling developments that Marcus obtained through private investigators. It was worse than I thought. Look at this, I said to Marcus one Tuesday afternoon, pointing at a spreadsheet projected on the wall. He's bleeding cash. He's paying old suppliers with deposits from new clients. It's a Ponzi scheme in all but name. He's robbing Peter to pay Paul, Marcus agreed, looking impressed. And he's skimming off the top. Look at these consulting fees paid to a shell company in the Caymans. That's how he's funding his lifestyle. And Tiffany's handbags, I muttered. Exactly, Marcus said. He's vulnerable, Marilyn. But he's slippery. If we attack him directly now, he'll file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The court will freeze his assets, and he'll wriggle away with a slap on the wrist. We need him to commit to something big. Something that exposes him completely. The South Georgia project, I said. The resort. Right. We need him to leverage everything he has left, his house, his office, his remaining equipment, to chase this deal. We need him to be so extended that one flick of a finger will topple him. During this time, I also worked on myself. I hired a personal trainer to come to the hotel. I worked out until my muscles screamed, channeling my anger into every squat and lunge. I ate clean. My skin cleared up. The exhaustion lines from years of taking care of everyone else faded. I wasn't doing it for Derek. I was doing it because for the first time in my life, I was investing in Marilyn. Meanwhile, Marcus leaked a rumor into the Atlanta business circles. He whispered to the right bankers and the right brokers that Vance Legacy Holdings was looking for a developer. A developer with vision to transform 2,000 acres of historic farmland into a world-class luxury destination. We knew Derek's ego. We knew he couldn't resist. Sure enough, a week later, Marcus walked into our war room with a smirk. "We got a bite," he said, tossing a glossy presentation folder onto the table. I looked at the cover. Sterling Developments, Proposal for the Vance Estate Project. I opened it. It was filled with grandiose renderings, fake projected profits, and photos of Derek looking visionary in a hard hat. "He wants a meeting," Marcus said. "He's been calling my office 5 times a day. He says he's the only man in Atlanta capable of handling a project of this magnitude." "The arrogance," I said, shaking my head. "Does he have the capital?" "No," Marcus said. "He's telling everyone he has a silent backer. But we know he doesn't. He's banking on getting the contract signed so he can use it as collateral to get a loan. He's gambling his entire existence on this." "Let's invite him," I said, closing the folder. "But not to an office. Let's invite him to the director's residence." I had recently purchased, through the trust, a historic mansion in Cascade Heights. It was old Atlanta. Dignified, imposing, and intimidating. It was everything Derek wanted to be but wasn't. "Are you sure you're ready to see him?" Marcus asked gently. "It's only been 3 months. The emotions are still raw." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the skyline. I saw the Sovereign building in the distance, where my husband was living with his mistress. "I'm not emotional, Marcus," I said, turning back to him. "I'm indifferent. He's just a line item on a balance sheet that needs to be corrected." "That's cold," Marcus said, but he was smiling. "You taught me," I replied. "Set the meeting for Friday. Tell him the board is very selective. Tell him to bring his A game. And tell him he can bring his associate. I want Tiffany there." "Tiffany? Why?" "Because she likes to watch," I said, remembering her face on the mezzanine. "I want her to watch this." The invitation was sent. Embossed stationery, wax seal, delivered by courier. Marcus told me later that Derek had practically drooled over it. We spent the next few days prepping the mansion. I wanted the atmosphere to be oppressive with wealth. We hired temporary staff to act as butlers and security. We displayed art that was worth more than Derek's life. I sat in the surveillance room with Marcus, watching the security feed from the front gate on the day of the meeting. A shiny new Range Rover pulled up. I recognized the license plate, Sterling one. He leased a new car, I noted, checking the financial logs on my tablet. He missed a payment to his concrete supplier last week to put the down payment on that. "Typical," Marcus muttered. Derek stepped out. He was wearing a suit that was a little too tight, a little too shiny. He adjusted his tie nervously in the reflection of the window. Then Tiffany stepped out. She was wearing a white dress that looked like something a bride would wear to a rehearsal dinner. It was inappropriate for a business meeting, but perfect for someone trying to stake a claim. She was clutching a new Birkin bag, probably a fake, or bought on credit. Look at this place, babe, I heard Derek say through the microphone. This is old money. This is the big leagues. If we land this, we can buy a place like this. We can move out of that apartment. I want a pool, Tiffany chirped. And a tennis court. We'll get it all, Derek promised. Just smile and let me do the talking. These old guys love a pretty face. I felt a surge of disgust, but also a dark amusement. These old guys. He had no idea. They were escorted into the grand foyer by our butler. They looked around, wide-eyed, taking in the marble floors and the crystal chandelier. Mr. King is waiting for you in the boardroom, the butler said. As they walked toward the library we had converted into a meeting space, I stood up in the surveillance room. It's time, I said to Marcus. Remember the plan, Marcus said, adjusting his cuffs. I play the skepticism. You play the authority. We let him dig his hole, then we push him in. I'm ready. I waited until they were seated. I watched on the monitor as Derek tried to charm Marcus. Mr. King, I must say, your reputation precedes you, Derek said, flashing his salesman smile. I'm honored to be considered for the Vance project. My company, Sterling Developments, is uniquely positioned. Save the pitch for the chairwoman, Marcus cut him off coldly. She makes the decisions. I just advise. Chairwoman? Derek blinked. Oh. I didn't realize a woman was in charge. Is she family? The only family, Marcus said. I checked my appearance one last time in the mirror. The navy suit was armor. The bob haircut made my neck look long and elegant. I applied a coat of dark red lipstick, war paint. I walked down the hallway. My heels clicked rhythmically on the hardwood floor. Click. Clack. Click. Clack. The sound of execution. I stopped at the double mahogany doors. I took a deep breath. Not of fear, but of anticipation. I pushed the doors open. The heavy doors swung open silently. Derek was mid-sentence, laughing at some joke he had just made. You know how it is, Mr. King, sometimes you have to break a few eggs too. He stopped. He turned in his chair to look at the newcomer. Tiffany turned too, looking bored, scrolling on her phone under the table. I stood there, framed by the doorway, the afternoon sun streaming in from the hallway behind me creating a silhouette. I stepped forward into the room. Derek's smile froze. It didn't fade naturally, it just stuck there, twitching, as his brain tried to process the visual data. He squinted. He tilted his head. Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling, I said. My voice was calm, resonant, and completely different from the pleading tone he had heard in the lobby 3 months ago. Derek stood up so fast his chair screeched against the floor. Marilyn? Tiffany looked up, her mouth dropping open. The ex-wife? What is she doing here? Did she break in? Sit down, Tiffany, I said, walking to the head of the table. I didn't look at her. I looked only at Derek. And Mr. Sterling, please, have a seat. We have a lot to discuss. I don't understand, Derek stammered. He looked at Marcus, then back at me. Mr. King, why is Marilyn here? Is she the cleaning lady? Marcus didn't even blink. Mr. Sterling, you are addressing Ms. Marilyn Vance, the CEO and sole owner of Vance Legacy Holdings. She is the client. She owns the land. The color drained from Derek's face so fast it looked like a curtain falling. Vance? But you're Marilyn Sterling. Your dad was a farmer. He grew nuts. He grew wealth, Derek, I said, sitting down in the high-backed leather chair at the head of the table. Something you seem to struggle with. This is a joke, Tiffany shrieked, standing up. Derek, this is a prank. She's homeless. You said she was homeless. Security, I said softly. Two large men in black suits stepped out from the shadows of the room corners. Sit down, miss. I'm sorry, I don't recall your last name, I said dismissively. Or leave. But if you leave, the deal is off. Tiffany plunked back down into her chair, looking terrified. Derek was trembling. I could see the sweat beading on his forehead. His eyes darted around the room, looking for a camera, looking for a way out. Marilyn, he choked out. You own the 2,000 acres? I do, I said, opening the folder in front of me. And coincidentally, it's the exact parcel of land you've built your entire royal resort proposal around. Tragic, isn't it? You spent thousands on these renderings, assuming you could charm some old country bumpkin into selling. I didn't know, Derek whispered. Obviously, I said. Now, I've read your proposal. It's ambitious. Flawed, but ambitious. Derek's survival instinct kicked in. I saw the shift in his eyes. He realized that I held the keys to his salvation. If he could get this contract, he could still save his company. He assumed, arrogantly, that he could still manipulate me. He straightened his tie. He tried to put the charm back on, but it looked grotesque now. Well, he said, clearing his throat. This is a surprise. A wonderful surprise, actually. Marilyn, I mean, Ms. Vance. Who better to partner with than family? We were a great team once. We built sterling developments together. I built it, I corrected. You just put your name on the door. Right, he laughed nervously. But look, we can do this. This project, it's a gold mine. If we join forces, we'll rule the South. I know the construction side, you own the land. It's destiny. He leaned over the table, his eyes pleading. I know we had a rough patch. The divorce, maybe we acted hastily. Maybe this is a sign we should reconcile. Professionally, of course. And maybe personally? Tiffany gasped. Derek. Shut up, Tiff, he snapped, not looking at her. Marilyn, baby, look at you. You look incredible. This suit, this hair. I always knew you had this in you. I was just pushing you to find it. I stared at him. The audacity was breathtaking. He was rewriting history in real time. He was actually trying to claim credit for my transformation. I let a small, cold smile play on my lips. A rough patch, Derek? You threw me out on the street with $10. You moved your mistress into my home before my side of the bed was cold. I was stressed. Derek pleaded. Business pressure. You know how I get. I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you. We can fix this. Just sign the intent to partner. Let me break ground on the resort. I'll give you 20% of the profits. 20%? Marcus scoffed from the side. Insulting. 50%. Derek shouted. 50-50 partners. Just like the old days. Please, Marilyn. I need this. I tapped my pen on the table. Click. 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 I am willing to consider your proposal, I said slowly. Derek slumped in relief. Thank God. Thank you, Marilyn. You won't regret it. On one condition, I added. Anything. Anything you want. I don't trust your numbers, I said, gesturing to his glossy folder. If we are to be partners, I need total transparency. I require a complete, forensic audit of Sterling developments. My team, led by Mr. King, will go through your books for the last 5 years. Every invoice, every receipt, every tax filing. Derek froze again. Panic flared in his eyes. An audit? He squeaked. Is that necessary? It takes time. We need to move fast. No audit, no deal, Marcus said firmly. Derek looked trapped. He knew his books were cooked. But he also knew that without this deal, he was bankrupt anyway. He had to gamble that he could hide the fraud, or that I would be too in love to notice. Fine, Derek said, his voice tight. Audit away. I have nothing to hide. Good, I said, standing up. Mr. King will be in touch on Monday. Good day, Mr. Sterling. I walked out of the room without looking back. As the doors closed, I heard Tiffany hiss, "You said she was a nobody," and Derek shouting, "Shut up. We have to clean the books this weekend." They had 48 hours to clean up 5 years of filth. It was impossible. And I knew it. The weekend passed. On Monday morning, Marcus arrived at Sterling Developments with a team of 4 junior auditors. I stayed at the mansion, monitoring the progress remotely. Derek didn't make it easy. He's stalling, Marcus reported on Tuesday. He's claiming files are corrupted. He's refusing access to the server room. And he's lawyered up. Derek had hired Saul Berkowitz, the most aggressive litigator in Atlanta. By Wednesday, I received a cease and desist letter claiming that my demand for an audit was corporate espionage and a violation of our divorce proceedings, which were still not finalized. Then came the phone calls. Derek called my new number, I don't know how he got it, at 2 a.m. "Marilyn, don't do this," he slurred. He sounded drunk. "You're playing a dangerous game. You think you're a CEO now? You're a housewife in a costume. Berkowitz will tear that trust apart. He says he can prove your father was senile when he signed it. We'll freeze your assets. You'll be back on the street." "My father was sharper on his deathbed than you are on your best day, Derek," I replied calmly. "I still love you," he shouted, pivoting instantly from threats to manipulation. "I miss you. Tiffany she's nothing. She's a child. I miss my wife. Come home, Marilyn. Let's stop this war. Call off the dogs." "The dogs are hungry, Derek," I said. "And they smell fear." I hung up. But his threats weren't entirely empty. Berkowitz filed an emergency motion to stop the audit. It was a clever legal move. It could have tied us up in court for months. I was worried. I sat in the library with Marcus. If he delays this, he can hide the money. Or he can find another sucker to invest. "He won't find another investor," Marcus said. "I've made sure of that. The word on the street is that he's radioactive. But the legal motion is a problem." "What do we do?" "We don't need the audit to know he's broke," Marcus said. "We just needed the audit to get access to his supplier list." "His supplier list?" "Yes. While my team was in his office for those few hours on Monday, they didn't just look for fraud. They copied his accounts payable ledger. We know exactly who he owes money to." Marcus slid a list across the table. Garcia Concrete, $120,000, 90 days overdue. Midtown Lumber, $85,000, 120 days overdue. Apex Electrical, $50,000, 60 days overdue. Small mom and pop suppliers, $250,000 total. "He's stiffing the little guys," I said, feeling sick. "I know Mr. Garcia. He has 5 kids. Derek is destroying them. He's using them as a free line of credit," Marcus said. "But this is his Achilles heel. These suppliers are angry. They're desperate. So we pay them," I said, the plan forming instantly in my mind. Excuse me? I want to buy his debt, I said. Use the shell companies. Contact Garcia, contact the lumber yard. Offer to buy their invoices for 100 cents on the dollar. Cash. Today. Marcus smiled. You want to become his only creditor? Exactly. If I own his debt, I don't need a court order to crush him. I can call in the loans. If he can't pay, I can force him into involuntary bankruptcy. That is diabolical, Marcus said. And brilliant. Berkowitz can't stop a creditor from collecting a valid debt. Do it, I said. Buy it all. Every nail, every board, every bag of cement. By Friday, I want to own every mistake he's ever made. While Marcus was executing the debt buyout, I decided to step out. I needed fresh air. I went to a high-end cafe in Buckhead, the kind of place where ladies who lunch go to drink $15 smoothies. I was sitting in the corner, reviewing documents on my iPad, when I heard the click-clack of heels that were too high for daytime. Well. Look who's pretending to be somebody. I looked up. It was Tiffany. She looked tired. Her makeup was a little heavy, trying to hide the stress. She wasn't wearing the silk robe today, but she was wearing a dress I recognized from my old credit card bills. Can I help you, Tiffany? I asked, not looking up from my screen. Stop playing games, she hissed, pulling out a chair and sitting down uninvited. Derek told me everything. You're trying to blackmail him into getting back together with you. It's pathetic. You think because you have some daddy money now, he's going to want you? You're old, Marilyn. You're dried up. I took a sip of my tea. Is that what he told you? That I want him back? He says you're obsessed with him. That you're using this business deal just to get close to him. She leaned in, her eyes narrowing. But he's mine. We're going to get married in Turks and Caicos as soon as his big deal goes through. You're just a speed bump. I laughed. It was a genuine laugh. Oh, honey. You think there's going to be a Turks and Caicos wedding? Derek can't even afford the coffee you're about to order. He's rich, she snapped. He drives a Range Rover. He leases a Range Rover, I corrected. And he's 2 months behind on the payments. And that dress you're wearing? He charged it to a company card that's about to be declined. You're lying. You're just jealous. She was shouting now. People were looking. The waiter approached, looking nervous. Is everything okay, ladies? I smiled at the waiter. Everything is fine. Actually, this young lady seems very stressed. She needs a chamomile tea. And a scone. She looks hungry. I pulled out my wallet. I didn't pull out cash. I pulled out the sleek, black Centurion card, the invite-only card that Marcus had helped me secure through the trust. It made a heavy thunk when I placed it on the marble table. Tiffany stared at the black card. She knew what it was. It was a level of wealth Derek could only dream of. Put her order on my tab, I told the waiter. And add a 50% tip for yourself for dealing with the noise. I stood up, packing my iPad. I leaned down to Tiffany's ear. I'm not trying to steal him, Tiffany. I'm trying to evict him. And here is a piece of free advice from one ex-wife to the future ex-wife: check your jewelry. If it's the stuff Derek bought, it's probably cubic zirconia. He saves the real diamonds for himself. Tiffany's hand instinctively went to the necklace she was wearing. Doubt flickered in her eyes. Why would I bother picking up the trash I already threw out? I whispered. Koi nu toi lam tu tien bua nai cho ko. Consider this meal charity. You're going to need it. I walked out, leaving her sitting there, staring at the black card, wondering if her entire life was a lie. Friday night arrived. The trap was sprung. Marcus confirmed at 5 p.m., "We have it all. We own $520,000 of Sterling Development's short-term debt. We hold the paper." Derek had invited me to dinner at Bones, a legendary steakhouse in Atlanta. He thought he had won the legal battle because the audit had stalled. He thought he was taking me out to sign the partnership papers. I arrived wearing black. Not morning black, predator black. Derek was waiting at the best table. He had a bottle of Dom Perignon on ice. He stood up to kiss my cheek. I turned my head so his lips hit the air. "Feisty," he laughed, pouring the champagne. "I like it. To us, Marilyn. To the future." I spoke to Berkowitz, told him to drop the motion. I figured, why fight? Let's just sign the deal. I'm ready to start digging on your land next week. "There will be no digging, Derek," I said, refusing the glass. "Come on, don't be like that. I know you're still mad about the lobby incident. I'll make it up to you. I was thinking, once we sign, I'll buy you a new car. Maybe a Mercedes?" "I already have a car," I said. "I have a driver." I reached into my bag. I didn't pull out the partnership contract. I pulled out a thick stack of papers bound with a red rubber band. I dropped it on the table, right next to the expensive steak knives. "What's this?" Derek asked, reaching for his reading glasses. "That," I said, "is a collection of assignment deeds." He frowned, reading the top page. "Garcia Concrete? Why do you have my invoice for Garcia Concrete?" "Read the next one," I said. "Midtown Lumber. Apex Electrical." He flipped through the pages faster and faster. His face went from confused to concerned to terrified. Why do you have these?" "Because I bought them," I said calmly. "I paid off all your debts, Derek." Mr. Garcia was very happy. He actually cried. He said you hadn't paid him since Christmas. Derek looked up, sweating. "You paid them? Why?" That's generous of you, Marilyn." "Thank you. We can work out a payment plan once the resort." "No," I interrupted. "I didn't pay them to be nice. I bought the debt. Which means Sterling Developments no longer owes them. You owe Vance Legacy Holdings." I leaned in. "And according to the terms of these invoices, which are all significantly overdue, the debt is callable immediately upon assignment." "Callable?" Derek squeaked. "I want my money, Derek," I said, my voice hard as steel. "All of it. $520,000. Plus interest and penalties." I don't have $500,000 cash," he shouted. A waiter looked over, alarmed. "You know I don't. That's why I need the project." "I don't care," I said. "You have 24 hours. If you don't wire the full amount to this account by 5 p.m. tomorrow, I will file a default judgment. I will seize your assets. I will take your trucks, your equipment, your office, and yes, your leasehold on the penthouse. You can't take the apartment. It's my home." "It's collateral," I corrected. "And I'm calling it in." Derek looked at me like I was a monster. "You set me up. You planned this." "I learned from the best," I said. "You taught me that business is war, didn't you? You leave with nothing. Isn't that what you said?" Derek's face went gray. His hands shook so badly he knocked over his champagne glass. The expensive liquid spilled all over the tablecloth, dripping onto his pants. He didn't even notice. He just stared at the stack of papers, the physical proof of his destruction. Right at that moment, seeing the fear in the eyes of the man who had tormented me, I felt it. The click. The final piece of the puzzle falling into place. It wasn't just revenge. It was justice. At the moment Derek's face turned pale, his hands trembling as he held the debt papers, I knew the game was over. If you're still listening up to this point, please help me by liking the video and commenting the number 1 below, so I know that you're amazing, and I understand that you're accompanying me throughout this journey. Your help is an incredibly great encouragement, cheering me on. Comment the number 1 so I can recognize you, and now, listen as I continue my story. I left Derek at the steakhouse, soaking in spilled champagne and his own sweat. I went back to the mansion and slept like a baby. Derek, however, did not sleep. According to Marcus's intel, the next 24 hours were a tragic comedy. Derek left the restaurant and started dialing. He called every contact in his phone. He called his banker. I need a bridge loan. $500,000. Just for a week. The banker laughed. Derek, your credit is shot. And we heard a rumor you're under audit for fraud. No way. He called his golf buddies. The men he had spent thousands on, buying drinks and cigars. Hey, buddy, listen, I'm in a tight spot. Sorry, Derek, bad timing. My assets are tied up in crypto. Sorry, Derek, I'm in a tunnel. Click. They all abandoned him. He was toxic. By Saturday afternoon, with 4 hours left on the clock, he returned to the penthouse. He was desperate. I wasn't there, but the security cameras in the hallway, which Marcus had hacked into, don't ask me how, captured the audio. We have to sell everything. Derek shouted, storming into the apartment. Tiffany was on the couch, watching TV. What? What's wrong? She cornered me. Marilyn bought the debt. We need $500,000 by 5 p.m. or we lose everything. He grabbed Tiffany's arm. Where are the bags? The Birkins? The Chanels? Get them. We're going to the reseller. Tiffany yanked her arm away. Are you crazy? Those are mine. You gave them to me. I bought them with company money. They're assets. Give them to me. No! Tiffany screamed. You said you were rich. You said we were going to be a power couple. Now you want me to pawn my purse to pay your ex-wife? I am bankrupt, you idiot. Derek roared, his face purple. If I don't pay her, we are on the street. Then you are on the street. Tiffany yelled back. She ran to the bedroom. Derek chased her. We heard crashing sounds. Screaming. Then Tiffany came running out, dragging 2 suitcases. She had raided the closet. Where are you going? Derek shouted. I'm leaving, she shrieked. I'm not going down with you, you loser. And by the way. She stopped at the door, turning back with a sneer that mirrored the one she gave me months ago. Marilyn was right. The diamond necklace? I took it to a jeweler yesterday. It's glass. You cheap fraud. Tiffany. She slammed the door. Derek was left alone in the silent apartment. He looked at his watch. 4:15 p.m. He sank onto the floor, right where he had stood when he kicked me out. He put his head in his hands. He realized, finally, that he had built his life on sand, and the tide had just come in. At 5:01 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Marcus. Funds not received. Default confirmed. Execute, I said. An hour later, a convoy arrived at the Sovereign. It wasn't just Marcus. It was the sheriff's deputies, a locksmith, and a moving crew. I sat in my tinted SUV across the street, watching. I didn't need to go inside. I didn't want to see him. I just wanted to see the end. Marcus went up with the deputies. Later, he told me what happened. They found Derek sitting on the floor, drinking straight from a bottle of whiskey. He didn't even fight. He just looked up at Marcus with dead eyes. She won, didn't she? Derek slurred. You lost, Mr. Sterling, Marcus corrected. There's a difference. You lost the moment you underestimated her. This is my home, Derek whispered. Not anymore, the deputy said, stepping forward. Mr. Sterling, we have a court order for the immediate seizure of this property and all contents to satisfy the judgment. You need to vacate the premises. They gave him 10 minutes to pack a bag. He grabbed the same tattered gym bag he had thrown at me. He put in a few shirts, his toothbrush, and the fake Rolex he had bought. Marcus walked him to the elevator. The same elevator ride I had taken. When they got to the lobby, the residents were watching. Mrs. Higgins and her poodle were there. The concierge was there. Derek walked out, head down, unshaven, smelling of booze. He looked 20 years older. He walked through the revolving doors onto the sidewalk. I rolled down my window just an inch. He looked around, dazed. He had no car. The repo man had taken the Range Rover an hour ago from the parking garage. Tiffany was gone. His friends were gone. He looked across the street and saw my car. He couldn't see me through the tinted glass, but he knew. He stared right at the window. For a second, I thought he might scream. But he just slumped his shoulders, turned, and began walking down Peachtree Street, dragging his bag into the oblivion of the city. It was a perfect mirror image of my departure. But while I had left with hope and a hidden card, he left with nothing but his own ego weighing him down. I thought that was the end, but the universe, and Marcus, had one more card to play. 2 weeks after the seizure, I was sitting in the garden of the Cascade Mansion, drinking coffee. The news was on the TV inside. Breaking news, local developer arrested in corruption scandal. I hurried inside. On the screen was footage of Derek being led out of a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. He was in handcuffs. Derek Sterling, owner of the now-defunct Sterling Developments, was taken into custody this morning, the reporter said. Charges include wire fraud, tax evasion, and... The reporter paused for emphasis. And criminal negligence related to the use of substandard materials in the Peachtree Creek Bridge project. Investigators say Sterling substituted industrial-grade steel with cheaper materials, pocketing the difference. The district attorney calls it a catastrophic failure waiting to happen. I gasped. The bridge? Marcus walked into the room behind me. I sent the files to the DA, he said quietly. Bankruptcy is one thing, Marilyn. But putting lives at risk? I couldn't let that slide. I looked at Derek on the screen. He was trying to hide his face from the cameras. He looked small. Pathetic. He's going to prison? I asked. For a long time, Marcus said. Federal prison. The IRS is involved now too. I turned off the TV. The silence in the room was heavy, but peaceful. Do you feel sorry for him? Marcus asked, watching me closely. I thought about it. I thought about the man I had loved. But that man never really existed. He was a character Derek played to get what he wanted. No, I said. I feel clean. It's over. I went to the cemetery the next day. I stood in front of Earl Vance's simple granite headstone. I placed a single white pecan blossom on the grave. We did it, Daddy, I whispered. The ship didn't sink. We turned it into a battleship. And now we're going to build a fleet. I sat there for a long time, listening to the wind in the trees, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't felt in 10 years. The anchor had done its job. Now, it was time to pull it up. 1 year later. The morning sun hit the leaves of the pecan trees, turning them into shimmering gold. I stood on the balcony of the new Vent Center for Trades and Technology. We hadn't built a luxury resort. I had cancelled Derek's project immediately. Instead, I used the land and the recovered assets to build something better. We built affordable housing for the workers in South Georgia. And here, on the edge of the estate, we built a school. A place where young men and women could learn carpentry, electrical work, plumbing, and accounting. A place where they could learn to build a life without cheating. I heard footsteps behind me. The graduation ceremony starts in 10 minutes, Madam Chairwoman, a deep voice said. I turned. Marcus was there. He wasn't wearing his stiff gray suit anymore. He was wearing a linen shirt, sleeves rolled up, looking relaxed. He was still my consultant, but he was also more. We had spent the last year rebuilding not just the company, but my life. We had late dinners discussing zoning that turned into late dinners discussing dreams. We argued about budgets and laughed about terrible movies. Are you nervous? He asked, stepping beside me. A little, I admitted. I have to give a speech. Just tell them the truth, Marcus said. Tell them about the anchor. I looked out at the campus. I saw students walking to the auditorium. I saw Mr. Garcia, the concrete supplier Derek had ripped off, waving at me. I had hired his company to build the foundation of the school. He was smiling. You know, I said, Dad called the card an anchor to keep me from drifting. But I think he got it wrong. How so? An anchor keeps you stuck in one place, I said, looking at Marcus. This was a sail. It pushed me forward. It pushed me to become who I was supposed to be. Marcus smiled, that rare, genuine smile that made his eyes crinkle. He reached out and took my hand. His grip was warm and solid. Ready to go down there, partner? He asked. Ready, I said. I squeezed his hand. We walked together toward the stairs. I was Marilyn Vance. I was 53 years old. I was divorced, scarred, and wiser. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't building someone else's dream. I was living my own. And somewhere, in a cold cell, Derek Sterling was sitting on a cot, wondering where it all went wrong. But I didn't think about him anymore. I had a kingdom to run.